I'm Ryan Hallford, and I love craniosacral therapy. From the theory, to the practice, to the people, there's always something in cranial work that fuels a sense of adventure in my life. I'd like to share that adventure with you on the Craniosacral Podcast. Hello, my craniosacral friends. I gotta start by telling you I had a great day in the clinic today. I feel so privileged to have watched freedom and health flow back into several individuals' lives today on my table. Sometimes it just amazes me how much healing the body can do with just a little support and some careful listening. Today, I witnessed significant personal suffering transform in a short period of time, right before my eyes, right under my hands, as small miracles were delivered to some very nice people who were lucky enough to seek out craniosacral therapy for help. It was just one of those really good days where everything seemed to go right. And I hope you, my dear listeners, are having good days and seeing miracles in your work as well. I want to give you one last reminder that I'll be hosting Michael Shea in Austin, Texas, next month for a cardiovascular biodynamic training, focusing on the peripheral arteries. If you're looking to refine your skills within the biodynamic model, and developed an improved sense of recognition regarding aspects of the cardiovascular system, well, come join us and enjoy a supportive environment where you can expand your skills and also support your own health. And speaking of Austin, I will be teaching a biodynamic series there starting soon. The initial dates have now been set. We'll be doing 2 level 1s to feed additional levels after that. The first level 1 class is full, but there is still some room left in the second one. You can see more about my offerings in Austin as well as what Michael's going to be doing there at the Craniosacral Resource Center school page at cranioschool.com. That's CRANIO school.com. Okay, today we are going to hear from Liz Kalinowska and Daska Hatton, 2 figures from the UK craniosacral scene who are the co-authors of the new book, Everybody Tells a Story, A Craniosacral Journey. Now, Everybody Tells a Story is kind of unique in the world of craniosacral literature in that it isn't an instructional text or a propaganda piece for the general public. Rather, it describes a journey through multiple sessions of craniosacral therapy by showing the perspective of both the client and the therapist. It tells the story of a fictional client and fictional therapist as they come into a relationship and then navigate a series of treatments, experiencing both ups and downs along the way. We get to hear about their challenges and insights and learning and growth in a story that, as it unfolds, provides some teaching moments to illustrate lessons around issues like boundaries, transference, and trust, and also utilizes myth and legend to place the work in a wider context. So this is an entertaining and enjoyable read and a helpful one that has been a welcome addition to my bookshelf. Now, the authors, Liz and Daška, have over 40 years of practice experience between them. They are the real deal. And in that, I mean they know what it takes to establish a practice and apply cranial theory to real life. They're both registered craniosacral therapists in the UK and have served various roles in the Craniosacral Therapy Association there, including positions of trustee, fellow, and chairperson, and supervisors as well, I believe. Now, they also teach workshops geared towards helping cranial practitioners establish healthy relationships with their clients. So when individuals like this talk, well, I tend to listen. And I hope you're ready to listen some today too, to an informative interview today about some of the professional concerns that we have in this work. Now, as usual, you can find links to their website in the show notes, along with an Amazon link to purchase their book. If you do use that link, the podcast gets a small percentage back. Thank you. At this time, Books and Bones doesn't have it available for sale, but you may want to check there later in case Christopher listed for sale at a later date. And also in the show notes, I put a link to the book Craniosacral Integration by Thomas Atlee, which was mentioned in the interview. Okay, well, that's about it for introductions. I hope you enjoy hearing from Liz and Daška. Okay, everyone. I am here with Daska Hatton and Liz Kalinowska. I'm really looking forward to doing the interview with them. They have written a really cool book that's really different than most of what we've seen in the field so far. And I know many of you out there are going to benefit from checking it out, and also from just hearing about the professional lives and development of two ladies who have dedicated so much time and effort into understanding how to be effective with this work and into helping others. So, okay, guys, you want to say hi? You're in London. How is it over there?
Well, it's a bit grey and cold at the moment. So yes, and I'm Daška Hatton, and I wanted to say hi and thanks so much for having us on this show. I think it's a fantastic resource for fellow therapists. And yes, it's a very gloomy, boring day out here.
Well, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we got some snow here in Texas, which is really out of the ordinary for us. So I keep looking out the window because it just looks so cool to see snow flurries. We're not used to it. So I'm bundled up in my jacket while I'm doing this interview here. And I've got some warm coffee. I normally don't drink coffee, so if I start talking really rapidly, well, just tell me to slow down.
Okay.
Okay, what I wanted to do, ladies, is some of our listeners may not be familiar with you. The listener base in the UK are more likely to know of you and some of your professional work, but in the States and other places and worldwide, some people may not know you. So I wanted to give you each a chance to introduce yourself by telling us your story. You know, how did you first discover craniosacral work, and what was the feeling behind that and the energy behind that, and how did it challenge you? How did you grow? And I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. I'll let you decide who wants to go first and just take some time and talk to us.
Yes. Okay, so I'm Liz Kalinowska, and I first came into the world of cranial work about 30 years ago. When I had some treatment, and actually it was from a cranial osteopath, and I was really fascinated by his approach. I hadn't had anything like that before. I was used to manipulative osteopathy at the time, and this was something completely new for me, and I was so fascinated and puzzled by the fact that he sat there for 20 minutes with his hand underneath my sacrum. And as far as I could see, nothing was happening externally, but I could feel so much going on internally. And then I sort of went there for several sessions and really had very good results from the work. And I went into his waiting room and I saw all these different people sitting there. There were young children, babies, older people. And I said to him at the time, how come, do you treat all these different kinds of people? And he said, yes, of course, this is for everybody. And so I felt I was looking for a career at the time. I'd brought up 3 children. I'd had some training in dietary therapy and counselling, and I was looking for some hands-on work, and I thought I need to do this. I want to do this. And so I asked him how I could do it, and he said, oh, you have to go off for 5 years and train to be an osteopath first. So I duly trotted off and signed up for 5 years osteopathy. And during that period, I saw a notice on the notice board in the osteopathic school which said craniosacral therapy. And I thought, well, this sounds what I want to do. I don't really want to do manipulations or adjustments or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I went off and did the craniosacral therapy training as well as the osteopathy training. So I finally qualified. It was 5 years later that I qualified in the osteopathy, and I had already qualified in craniosacral therapy. So I was invited by the trainer in the craniosacral school to come and be a tutor, which I did. I spent 6 years at that school being a tutor, and then moved on, and some of the other tutors on that training and I got together and we set up our own training, which was called the Institute of Craniosacral Studies. Mm-hmm. I've been running workshops since 1999 in craniosacral therapy, and it's just a way of life now. It's just the cranial world, and I've been very involved in it for all these years.
So that first encounter when you were on the table and the osteopath was holding your sacrum, you said you could feel a lot going on inside.
Yeah.
Without going into a therapy session here, what were you feeling? What was it that was different about this kind of work? Can you be a little bit more specific about what was happening for you?
I could feel my body letting go, I think, is what I can say, which I hadn't experienced before so profoundly. I could feel bits inside me relaxing and letting go that I hadn't felt before, that I didn't know could do that. It was a whole new way of being and experiencing. Yeah, I think that's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, well, that's an eye-opening experience for many people, to begin to feel parts of themselves soften that they might not have even known were there.
Yeah, exactly. You meet your body in a way that you haven't done before.
Yeah. So who were some of your first teachers that made an influence or an impact on you?
In craniosacral work?
Yes.
Well, I trained with Thomas Attlee.
Okay.
And I worked for him for 6 years as a tutor. So I suppose he was the first person that made an impact on me in a craniosacral sense. But I've gone on to work with other people that I found very, very helpful. I've worked with Matthew Appleton. I don't know if you've come across him. We worked together. We ran a training together, and he was amazing to work with.
Yeah, I have had 2 different guests recommend that I get in touch with him to do an interview, so I haven't met him yet.
Yeah, no, he's a lovely, lovely person, and he has a very wonderful approach to the work, I think.
Good. I'm started to work my way through Thomas Attlee's book.
Yeah.
And so that he put a lot in there. I like his style. It's a little bit different than some of the other books too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, well, this is helping me to make kind of connections and know what the web is like over there in the UK. So great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, how about we shift
Hmm.
over to Daska? Why don't you tell us about how you fell into this wonderful work?
Yeah, well, I guess I've been an Alexander technique teacher for 20 years. And I think my story really begins there, in that I couldn't have come from a further background than bodywork or this sort of work. And I came to the Alexander world because I had a sort of a crisis in my life. And just working with the body in that way gave me such space and such clarity. But after let's say about 15 years, excuse me, I happened to have a cranio session, and I was completely mesmerized by the magic and the mystery and the delicacy and the stillness of this work. In the Alexander world, we talk about non-doing, and in fact, that's our aim, is to teach people how to bring a non-doing into their waking lives and into their movement. But craniosacral therapy takes this concept much further and much deeper. And I'd never known such stillness as I had had within a cranio session. And I became so hooked that I was determined to discover more. I mean, so not only is it mysterious and delicate, it's extraordinarily powerful. And I experienced it as a sort of gateway to a completely different and almost a magical way of seeing the world and my place in it, if you like. I think, I don't know if it's in the book or elsewhere, I've described it as being like psychotherapy, but for the body and via the body. And I love the fact that the way that we work is completely non-verbal. And so in my own life, I realized that it gave me a chance to be able to see very familiar difficulties and problems, but from a completely different perspective, and one that was without judgment. So it felt refreshing and enlightening. And also, I don't think that I've ever experienced being listened to on such a profound level as that I do within cranio work. And still, so yes, I guess I love the magic, the majesty, the mystery, the magic of it, all of those things.
So, who have been some of the more influential teachers for you?
Well, particularly, I suppose, Mike Boxall. I haven't, in fact, gone to one of his workshops for a couple of years, but I spent a couple of years doing many workshops with him, and he particularly influenced this concept of a joint practice, where the therapist is so much on part of the session, and also, I suppose, his notion of it being a very feminine way of working, I think very much came from him. I too trained with Thomas Attlee, and then went on, as I said, to do quite a lot of work with Mike. So I feel very fortunate that, and now Liz and I work together and run workshops and things. So I feel very very grateful to work together here.
Right. So tell me a little bit about how you two connected, because you have a good chemistry. And I'm just wondering how you came to meet, how you came to understand that you work well together. What was that story?
Well, I think Liz was, at the time that I met her, the head of the Craniosacral UK organisation. And she was the chair of it. Yeah. And she was persuading me to take a seat on the council, as it then was. Now it's a charity. So we met, and then we realised that we got on very well. So just gradually we became friends, and we continued to have an ongoing discussion about the work and what fun it was.
I think what we recognised was how much we had in common.
Yeah.
We started talking about books, and it was always we'd always find that we had the same favorite book or something like that. So it was really interesting. The deeper we went, the more we said, oh wow, that's, I know all about that. And these people that nobody else I'd ever talked to had heard of, she knew about, so it just really went from there. We really connected on a very strong level. Yeah.
Great. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about your work together, and particularly your book, Everybody Tells a Story, A Craniosacral Journey. Well, let's start off. Writing a book is a big deal. There's a lot of time involved. Many people, even that enjoy writing, say it can be very frustrating at times. So why write a book? Why undertake such a big journey together? What was it that compelled you to want to go through that process?
Well, I think we sort of mentioned it in the book. I think that during one of these conversations that we were having, we were saying, isn't it weird that, most of our clients are women and most of the therapists that we know are women, and yet most of the books and most of the courses are run by men. And I want to say at this point, we really aren't talking gender here. We're in our book, we talk about it being a feminine way of working.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean about it not being a gender thing. And we suddenly thought, well, I don't know, why don't we try to write a book?
We started with an essay, really, because we started talking about, well, what do we mean by it is a feminine approach? What exactly does that mean? And so we both sat down and we said, well, why don't we both sit down and write what we think that means? And that's how it all started. And suddenly it sort of morphed itself into a book somehow. I don't know quite how, but we just wrote and we wrote more, and then it got a structure somehow. And we always say it feels as if it wrote itself in many ways. But we had to do it.
And I think the other thing is that I think, as we've been saying, my experience of this work is that it's so magical and it's so ethereal and delicate, and yet all of the books, most of the books that I've read are very, very technical, and I have to say I found a lot of them quite intimidating because it left me feeling very discouraged, because I thought that I would never be able to achieve that level of competence or the mastery that I know that the authors exhibit. And I remember saying to Liz, well, it's not really like that in my practice. Is it like that in your practice, where people come for 2 or 3 sessions and their lives are changed?
Yeah.
My work is that can happen, but it tends to be much, much slower and much longer term than that. And I don't think as a therapist one always feels that you know what you're doing, or I don't. And from workshops and from listening to fellow practitioners, it seems that a lot of people have doubts and are unsure how to approach particular clients, or how to continue. So we thought we'd really try to write what it felt like to really be a therapist on both sides of the table.
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing we really wanted to convey, was to the general public what it's like to come for a series of craniosacral therapy sessions. It's something that you don't know. If somebody's recommended you to go, you have no idea what's going to happen on that table. And reading the book in advance, perhaps, would be really helpful to give people an idea of the scope that the work has. There's so much more to it than people might know about or might think. So it was really something to help therapists and the general public to get a better idea of what craniosacral therapy really is.
Yeah. From the therapist side, I was really impressed in the way you go about describing the experience of the therapist. Having had almost 2 decades of clinical practice myself, even teaching, I sometimes forget the level of insecurity, that is really present when we get into this kind of work. We don't know, what am I feeling here? Am I working correctly? Am I helping? And it really, really, I think, resensitized me as a teacher to remember some of those insecurities that are happening while we're getting our ground with this work. So that was a wonderful reminder for me. And I think for newer practitioners getting into the work, it's really going to help them settle into their own experience. And so I highly recommend this for newer therapists, especially if you're dealing with some insecurities about what you're feeling. You have a passage in the book that I had bookmarked, and my bookmark fell out. But talking about people feel different things. We come from different backgrounds with this work. Some people may really have a strong structural background, and they may be seeing things in those terms. Other people may see things from an energetic standpoint or whatever gifts and background they have. And you say, it's okay. You can be effective working with who you are and what your natural abilities and current skill set is. So trust in that.
Well, I think that was really very much a sort of guiding force in this book, because we, as I said, finding some of the other books quite intimidating, although incredibly informative. That's exactly what we wanted to show, is that yes, there are endless different experiences, but the only thing that's important is to be honest with yourself about it, I think. Well, the only thing that's important. I don't want to be prescriptive, but that was my personal experience, and that's what we really wanted to try to get across. This sense of it being a joint practice, and that if you can allow yourself to be vulnerable as a therapist, you're opening up a space for your clients in a way which I don't know any other therapy or bodywork therapy that does.
Yeah, Mike Boxhall spoke to that end when I did an interview with him about being vulnerable. Yeah. And that's been a big lesson for me as a therapist. The other current of thought that was running through my mind reading the book, the way it really personally affected me was I found that the more I read, the more I was reconnecting with the client's point of view. And I have found where I've gotten in some habits where I have kind of desensitized myself to some aspects of what the client might be feeling. So reading the firsthand account of a client going to a new practitioner, finding the office, dealing with their own lives, and then the ups and downs, you describe it, of the therapeutic relationship, I immediately found myself relating better to my clients, whether they be new or be old. So thank you. That really helped me, and it really helped my clients to feel a better connection. Can you speak some about that, about the habits that maybe more experienced practitioners might have developed?
I guess as an Alexander teacher, habit is something that we look at a lot.
Okay.
In that it implies a kind of fixity, and immediately you're following a habit, you lose choice. But the cranial work has allowed me to much more be present with what is happening, rather than trying to be too prescriptive about how I think a session should go. Mm-hmm. It's much more freeing, and again, I think that's what we tried to write, is we show, I think, our therapist getting into difficulties because she knows that her client isn't having a nice experience, or those sorts of things, and we try to show how that's fine, that is okay. Mm-hmm. And in fact, but I'm not sure I've answered your question here.
Yeah. I think you're heading in the right direction. Liz, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it's very easy to get into the habit of feeling that if you're comfortable, then the client's going to be comfortable too.
Yes.
That you're sitting in your room, which you're very familiar with, everything around you is normal, and you've got somebody coming in who is has never been in that room before, who doesn't know what you're going to be doing to them. And so we perhaps miss out bits sometimes of what we should be saying and how we should be making that person feel more at ease, giving them a chance to settle down and be in the space, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a sort of little routine after a while, and finishing the session, the same thing too. People sometimes don't finish well, you know, don't finish the session well.
Yes. But often withdrawing contact is as important as initiating contact.
Yeah.
Again, as we know, because it's you reach such profound depth that it needs to be skillfully negotiated, coming back to the real world, and leaving the session.
Talk a little bit more about how to skillfully break that contact or to skillfully disengage. I find that to be a really rich area lately that I'm trying to pay more attention to. What are the elements of a skillful disengagement at the end of a session?
I think it's just that constant negotiation that you have to have with touch. I think we have to do an internal negotiation all the time. We're working with somebody throughout the session about how your touch is, and coming towards the end is, how does this person need to end this session? Because everybody needs something different. Everybody needs a different way of ending. And it's not, you can't have a standard.
Yeah.
You've got you've got to make it right for that person, so that they don't go out thinking, I feel abandoned, I feel left, I feel lost, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing next. Do I have homework? You know, there's each person needs something to finish it off right for them. And you can't get it right every time. I mean, I think that's something else we emphasize a whole lot in the book, is that you don't get it right, you know. But the more you do it, the more you see how you haven't done it right, the more you will get it right, I think. So, yeah, it's learning. It's all learning, whether you've been doing it 20, 30, 40 years, you know, you're still learning all the way.
Sure. Speaking of learning, Daska, did you want to say something? Or?
No, I was just going to say, I guess in leaving contact, I actually almost in my mind or in my whole self, I actually say, I won't speak out loud, but I'll say I'm about to withdraw contact. About 5 minutes or so before I do, we're coming to the end of the session. Is there anything else? And it's a sort of like a non-verbal announcement that that's what's going to happen. So hopefully that you're guiding someone gently back to
into harbour.
Into harbour. Yes, it's a nice word. Exactly.
So you mentioned about, we know we're going to learn by doing. And we're going to make some mistakes possibly here and there. Some people don't like that word, but maybe we don't do things optimally at times. I want to kind of push a little bit here with you personally, and I'm wondering if you could each share with us a mistake that you might have made, you know, therapeutically some point in what you learned from that.
Okay.
Okay, a real mistake I made, and I feel someone hasn't, is just talking too much about a current situation. As somebody came in, and as we all know, this last year has been a huge political upheavals on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
And I think I had a client who came in after one of these sort of seismic shifts, and I remember talking about it, and it coloured the whole session. And I thought, my goodness, I've written about boundaries, I've given workshops on boundaries, and here I am breaking my rule. And I found it very difficult to make the session as meaningful as I would have liked it to have been, and I really wished I hadn't done that. And it was a big lesson to try to really keep my attention focused on the relationship between myself and my client what was happening in the room right there. And I felt it was an indulgence that I wish I hadn't. So I hope I've learned from that.
Yeah, I had some similar situations recently too with that. It's amazing the kind of energy that's been put into people's lives from some of the political events lately. And they'd come in with a lot emotionally invested in it. I had to deal with my own things. And so I'm glad to hear you say that I wasn't the only one.
Well, yeah, that was a big learning curve. I mean, yes, and actually recently we also work together. We developing
double treatments.
Yeah, we're working together, which is very nice for clients to have two people working. But we've had recently a couple of interesting people, which have left me feeling slightly awkward, I must say. And you can sometimes you're picking up something which may resonate with you more than you would like.
Right.
And yes, mistake. I think the mistake I'm thinking of is holding on to a client for too long, and believing perhaps that things would go better the longer we kept working, and it should have been obvious, and it was obvious in the end, because I took it to supervision and realized what was happening. I was wanting to be everything to that particular person, and they actually needed to be passed on to somebody else. They needed to do some other kind of work, actually was much more suitable for them. So that is a mistake. Yeah, that's a mistake. But you learn a lot from something like that as well.
So what was it about this particular client that really drew you in? I mean, to the extent that you're comfortable talking about it.
I think in this case it was just a particularly needy person. It was the neediness.
Okay.
That got me there.
That's a great fit for a therapist. Somebody needs me? Yeah.
Yes, of course. We all respond to that. But if you keep responding to it, none of us are going anywhere.
Right. I want to back up for a quick second and talk about the habits, some of the habits that we get in our professional lives. Do you have any methods or maybe advice for keeping fresh? What kind of things can we incorporate into our lives to keep ourselves seeing more with cleaner, fresher eyes instead of maybe bringing too much of the past into the present?
I think for me, a lot of the time, it's really being interested in who I'm working with. And I'm thinking particularly that you can have clients that you're not really sure. You're almost, I hate to say the word bored, but almost there's an element of they're hidden. You don't know how much to push, and you can coast in a session like that. Well, I find I can. And I think it's really reigniting my interest, and that means for me coming back to myself, really coming back to this sense of my feet on the ground and what I'm actually experiencing in my hands. It can be very easy to coast, I think. So you move from one position to another. It all feels quite safe and cozy.
Yeah.
But I think it can be coasting. So it's trying to find that edge between safety and exploring, and how much should we push a client? How much should we push the edges there? I don't know. It's different every client, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that to me is trying to keep that edge alive, sort of, walking that boundary between safety and vulnerability. Yeah.
And experimentation, not becoming not becoming too sort of dry and locked up in what you do. I think I see craniosacral work as an art form, really, that you can experiment and move. It's not fixed. You can get fixed in it and think this is how I have to do it.
Yep.
But I think you need to challenge yourself all the time and say, is there another way I could work with this? Is there something else I could do here? Have I got any other skills that I'm not using in this particular, what have I learned before? Can I use that still? So it's just this constant questioning and the constant thing, am I meeting this person in the right place?
Yeah.
Am I meeting them in the place where they need to be met? So it's a dialogue with yourself all the time, and a dialogue with them too.
Yeah.
How can I get this to move somehow,
Or even, yes, I mean, if one isn't, sometimes there are things that you feel, there's something in the room with the client and they're not voicing it, or they're saying, we all, I'm sure, have had that experience. And then I don't know myself whether sometimes I don't confront those because of my own security or because of theirs, my own vulnerability. And I think that's an area that I'm constantly working with. Am I not touching that place because it's uncomfortable for me? And I pretend that it's uncomfortable for them? I don't know.
Right.
But that's why this work is so alive always.
That's it. The word is alive, isn't it? Alive and living, and moving, and inspirational. So if you've stopped being inspired by it, then that's really sad.
Yes.
Because so much more to find still, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's happened to me. At times it gets a little dry, and I found that going and getting a session, helps from someone.
Yeah.
And for me, and particularly going and being a student in someone else's class, really helps to be on the table for several days in a row in an environment where I'm not the teacher or what have you, and I can just soak it in without the responsibility, getting the work done with new, fresh eyes that are passionate about learning. I come back from a class just seeing all kinds of new things, and so for me, I'm in love with training and the training process because it just really invigorates me in so many ways, learning. Yeah.
I actually find teaching a workshop as well is really, really helpful, because you have to sit down and think about the other people that are there. That what kind of learning do they need? What's going to bring them out? What's going to help them to express what they want to express? So it's. I always find after doing a workshop, I've got a new perspective as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, in fact, we're working together running workshops at the moment. And actually, I learned so much from the people who come to the workshops, because we're not actually teaching how to do craniosacral therapy. We're actually exploring these questions that we're talking with you now today about.
Yeah.
And listening to everybody's approach is so interesting and so helpful for all of us. People, it's wonderful.
I find I learn a great deal as well when I'm in the role of the teacher. But what I like about being a student is I'm on the table and I can kind of check out.
I'm lying down. I always say at workshops, I know that all you all really want to do is get on the table and lie down. You don't want to hear me talking. Yeah.
All right, so I wanted to ask you on the professional side, what do you think about specialization? I'm not sure how the trend is in the UK or other parts of Europe so much. I'm learning, but we have a lot of people here that will tend to specialize in working with kids or working with babies or working with certain types of problems. It seems to me like you guys kind of have a general practice where you see a lot of different types of people, as do I. I like having that variety. I'm wondering if you ever tried specializing in a population, or you have colleagues that have, and kind of how you view that.
I never tried it. I do see a lot of babies myself, and always have done, but I don't specialize. And I do like to have a cross section of people, very much like to have a cross section of people, because to be perfectly honest, if you only see babies, that, I don't know. I like to have more than that. I like to see, as I say, a cross section. But I think if people have a particular experience, like there are a lot of people that work with chronic fatigue, specialize in chronic fatigue. And often those are people who may have had some experience of chronic fatigue themselves. And I think that they have a very interesting perspective in working with things like that. So I can see how if I had that particular experience myself, I might want to go into that field. But since I'm a mum and have had 3 children, I think babies are very much more my scene. Yeah. Although I could have been completely fed up with them by now.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking you were going to say.
Yeah. No, I too are very much a generalist. In fact, I don't tend to see babies. If someone rings up with a baby, I send them on to Liz.
She throws them in.
But it's just not my particular thing. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's just how it is. Some people are better working and gaining a sort of very deep knowledge in one particular field.
Yeah. I
think as I've got older, I've realised that my interests are much wider. But I don't think there's a value either way. It's just how I do things, or how I like to do things.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, got an interesting question for you here. What's the worst professional advice you've ever been given?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, dear. That's left field, isn't it?
Golly, I don't know. The worst professional advice. I don't suppose it was advice. I guess it's this feeling that you know best.
Yeah.
I think that you will know when someone comes in what to do, and you know what's wrong with them, and you know what they need. I think that's pretty dangerous, actually. And yes, and in fact, I'm constantly trying to sort of step back from that, because I find myself very easily falling into that sort of thing of, oh, you should do this or you should do that, particularly if it's, and again, that's what we try to write about, particularly if it's someone who has a similar experience as you have had, similar difficulties. But again, I don't think I'm really answering your question here.
Well, you're speaking to kind of this paradox. It's a conundrum we have to deal with when you're bringing up a new student, in that they often are not very confident, and you want to help build their confidence. But if you do that in a way that is not appropriate, it works against them, because they lose some humility and some sensitivity to what the client might really be needing. You're teaching us something valuable there, I think, Daska, with your response.
Okay.
I suppose I could say that the worst professional advice I ever had was go off and study 5 years to become an osteopath. But then I could also say that was the best professional advice, because it's been really useful.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually really need that 5 years, because I only wanted to do cranial work. But yeah, it certainly has given me a lot of anatomy and physiology and all the rest of that stuff that has been really useful in becoming a teacher. Mm-hmm. It's always helpful to be able to give people the right answer about which muscle this is, or which hole in the skull that is. So yeah, it's been a boon, but it's also took 5 years of my life where that I didn't really need to do, I suppose, in the long run.
Yeah, I meet young people that may be very bright and very driven, and they're seriously considering going to osteopathic school, which is a very big investment of time and money here to be an
Mm.
osteopath in the States. And I really will, sit them down and counsel them and find out if that's really what they want to do. And for some, it's a good fit, and for others, they're better served by just focusing on being a therapist.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
it's a very individual world on what's going to work there, but you don't necessarily have to go through all of that training and the stress and, and the
Mm.
pressure
No.
Mm.
to get where you want to be
No,
if you
no.
want to focus on manual therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so you guys teach some workshops mainly in the London area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, at the moment, though, we are looking to take it to different cities in the UK, and we're very happy to come to the States if you think that it would there's a market for it.
Well, there you go, guys. About 70% of our listeners are in the United States, so now you've got several thousand that have heard you. If you want to bring Liz
Yeah.
and Daska in, I'll let you know how to get in touch with
Yeah.
them. One of the reasons I'm really happy to have you guys on is I think we're kindred spirits in that a big focus in our work is to help our fellow practitioners find their
Mm-hmm.
place in the work.
Yeah.
And so tell us a bit more about the types of classes you have been offering. You cover things like boundaries and
Mm.
what are you teaching?
We're teaching, I hope we're teaching practitionership.
Ooh, nice word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we were saying earlier, we're working with postgraduate students, so we're really not looking at how they put their hands on or whatever, but we're looking to provide a forum where people can explore where they're coming from as a practitioner. For example, we talk about it in our book, but the wounded hero, or the wounded healer. Sorry, yes, exactly. Is that this is quite a common experience, and it's quite interesting to tease it out and to see what motivates us in our work.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope to offer a forum where we can examine those issues. We recently gave a workshop on the wounded hero, healer. Sorry, I keep talking here. And when we wanted to focus in the first half of the day, we focused on letting go, and then we looked at what the experience was of the people when they were working, when we were talking about letting go, both on the table and as a therapist. And the second half of the day, we looked at acceptance. And again, what difference does that make, both as a practitioner and as someone on the table?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what happens if we open a space in ourselves for those wounds that we all carry,
Mm-hmm.
rather than trying to let them go? So we're looking at just teasing out a bit more about what makes a good therapist or an effective therapist, what happens when things go wrong, all those things, and hopefully doing it in a safe forum where participants can learn from each other.
Right.
Because it can be quite lonely, you know, being a therapist.
Definitely.
And, you know, particularly we have people who come from outside London because, you know, in London we're lucky we have lots of people to discuss or to meet, but it can be very lonely out there. So, yeah, we wanted to share experiences.
In fact, in the workshops, there's very little teaching and lots of sharing and experiencing. So they're very much places where people can come and talk about what's been going on for them.
Yeah, I see.
Rather than teaching from the front.
Right.
So, and the kind of workshop we like to give people, and people actually love doing them.
And it's very much how I would hope, or we hope to approach a session, in that as Liz says, we're not looking to teach our perspective. We're looking to receive and to support and to hold. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't have an end point. We simply have some questions and how to explore. And we may do some exercises to illustrate various points, but that's it. It's how to explore who we are, where we're coming from.
Right. We have covered some great territory. I think there's going to be a lot of listeners that are feeling a little less lonely themselves now. To hear that some of their challenges are experienced by others, and we're all in the same boat. Well, is there any thing else you might want to cover? Anything you wanted to share that you haven't had an opportunity to? One last plug for your book, maybe?
I don't really know.
I don't know. Could I just do a short reading from the book? Would that be all right?
That would be beautiful.
Okay. I just want to read from the last chapter, which just gives you an idea, more of an idea about us. So, whilst writing this book, we have played out all three of the female parts in the Demeter myth. We set out on the journey without any idea of how to pull it all together. Like Persephone, we innocently gathered thoughts to make a random bunch of ideas, trusting that somehow things would work out. As time went on, we also lived the Demeter role. We went searching for our book, sometimes in dark places, so that we could bring it into the daylight. Like Demeter's retreat from life, I too withdrew from the world during the writing process. My own practice was much quieter than usual, and friends noticed I was less communicative. Finally, we found the Hecate, or the crone part of ourselves. Hecate is often depicted as a witch, but her contribution to our book is that of bringing the maturity and wisdom of years, as well as the element of magic, to the story. As a goddess, she is associated with crossroads and transitional places, and she accompanied Persephone on her return to Hades, acting as her companion and guide. She is the light bearer who illuminates the dark place with her twin torches, and we have found that her presence has informed our task of throwing light on the magical elements of the work we do.
Very nice.
What we haven't talked about is why we brought the myths into the story, but that may not completely fit because it hasn't been mentioned before. But
well, let's talk a little bit about that now. Tell us about that bringing in of myth into this educational process of practitionership.
Well, I guess that was something we both discovered, that we'd had a lifelong love and interest in the myths, particularly Greek myths. But I've always seen myths as being just different ways of negotiating our lives on this planet. And it's always fascinated me. And they're just different stories, different difficulties that people have encountered along the way. And to me, craniosacral therapy, for the first time, brought those myths into my body. I actually, often when I'm working, I might see a kind of mythical story or experience the real truth of that. And in our book, we, as Liz was saying, we illustrate various passages with myths. For example, the very familiar Demeter myth, showing the three ages of woman, or of mankind, if you like. And so we wanted to bring this archetypal perspective into the work that we do, because I think it is there.
And it's such a great way of giving you another way of interpreting what's going on with your client. You know, if it takes you away from this kind of, oh, what's going on here, I don't know. If you can look at it from that perspective, you get such a much deeper insight
Yeah.
into.
See the larger patterns behind the life. Yeah.
Yes, so I've written at one point, or we have written at one point, that the myth is simply an ancient way of describing the process of mental breakdown and subsequent regeneration. And what we've always liked about this way of perceiving breakdown is the fact that no blame or shame is ascribed to the one who breaks down. To the contrary, it is either a significant rite of passage, as it was for our client in our story, or a process foisted upon us by something entirely beyond our comprehension. In the mythological world, protagonists are frequently subject to indiscriminate forces completely outside their control. And I quite like that idea of being in a larger pattern. And I think it can be quite comforting to somebody, or it was certainly comforting to me when I was going through a difficult period, to just think, hey, others have trodden this path before, and this was their way out. This was their reason. And it helps to find that you're, again, not alone in the world.
Yeah. It depathologizes situations and helps us to feel more comfortable with the process that's unfolding before us.
Yeah.
I think actually, in fact, there's if I can find it, there's a great quote that we use from Jung, who talks about because we've eliminated the gods from our lives, they've become interesting pathologists for the doctor's waiting room. I haven't quoted it exactly, but that will do.
That's the spirit of it, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, I want to take this chance to thank you both for your efforts on writing this book. You know, it is a gift for us. It's going to help many practitioners. It's going to trickle out to help the people that they serve. And so thank you both for your energy and your efforts and your care with helping others.
Well, thank you very much for having us on your show.
We've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And you've asked us some very interesting questions.
When I started this project over a year ago, I didn't really realize that I was going to need to work on my interviewing skills. I was just going to call up some colleagues and let's just talk. And I'm trying to learn that there's a skill to interviewing, and I've been working on that. So hopefully the interesting questions were helpful for others.
They were very helpful.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to put a link to your book on my website. You can find it on Amazon too. And if there's anywhere else they can find us, just let us know. And also your practice. Your website is jointpractice.co.uk, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put a link in the website there so they can find out more about your work in London if they want to refer, and they can also find out more about your teaching or your workshops too.
Excellent. Good. And yes, thank you very much.
Okay, ladies, have a wonderful day. And
you?
Hopefully we'll be in touch again soon. Well, there's a little shop talk with Liz Kalinowska and Daska Hatton. I hope you found that helpful in whatever way is meaningful for you. I highly recommend you check out their book, Everybody Tells a Story. Whether you're a new practitioner or an experienced practitioner, there's probably something in it that's going to help you be more effective in the clinic. So give it a read. Shoot me an email. Tell me what you think about the book. And also, you can tell me what you think about the podcast. I'm always open to feedback. My email is ryan@craniosacralpodcast.com. I love hearing from you. It helps me understand where your interests lie and what I can do to better serve you and my listening community. Okay, that's about it for now. I'm leaving town tomorrow to go teach, and when I get back, we'll be having another episode published. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be back soon.